Welcome back. As President Obama considers expanding the air campaign against ISIS by striking targets in Syria, he gets support today from an unlikely source, and that's Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, normally a fierce critic, says the president's doing the right thing. So I'm joined now by Bob Bears, a CNN national security analyst and a former CIA operative. James Gelvin is a professor of history at UCLA and author of The Arab Uprising, What Everyone Needs to Know. And Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, CNN military analyst and former commanding general, U.S. Army, Europe, and 7th Army. So quite an accomplished group we have here. General, you first. Will bombing ISIS stop them from advancing and give the Kurds or Iraqis a chance to gain ground?
Well, it certainly is affecting their freedom of maneuver and their freedom of movement. It won't stop them completely, but it will certainly blunt them. And I think that's part of the requirement right now, to give their opposition, the Peshmerga, the Iraqi army, an opportunity to fight back.
Bob, the consensus is that bombing won't make them go away. So what does the U.S. do to isolate and destroy ISIS short of ground operations?
We need the entire region part of this. What the United States doesn't want to be is find itself in a position where we are bombing Raqqa, the capital of ISIS, and killing them. And it makes it look like an American war. We need the Saudis, we need the Emiratis, and the rest of these people. But this group does have to be something. I totally agree that bombing will blunt them, but it's not going to stop them. But what we can't afford to do is get into a full-fledged war in Syria and Iraq. It would be a disaster.
James Gelvin, ISIS has taken a lot of ground and very quickly, and they're said to be smart fighters, but can they hold the territory?
Oh, absolutely not. ISIS consists of about 8,000 to 10,000 fighters. They have a territory that's approximately the size of Belgium. They are built on a very shaky coalition that consists of former Saddam Hussein military people, tribal leaders, and religious zealots. They're despised wherever they rule. So it's very unlikely they're going to be able to hold on for very much longer. They have not been able to, they have not met with significant resistance, which is why they've been so successful so quickly.
I want to, Senator Rand Paul has an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that just came out, and he's criticizing the administration's foreign policy. And here's what he says. He says, our Middle Eastern policy is unhinged, flailing, about to see who to act against next with little thought to the consequences. This is not a foreign policy. Is he right? General?
Well, I think Mr. Paul really doesn't quite understand the implications and the complexities in that part of the world. You move in one direction one day, you're going to have to move in a different direction the other. The number of tribes, the number of religions, the number of sheikhs, the number of politics, it's very difficult to get a coherent strategy against the entire Middle East. I think our current administration is doing the best job possible, and I think the action, and I'll echo what Bob said, when you're culturally and linguistically different than the states that you're operating in, which America is when we go in that area, you need a whole lot of help from other people. Not only other Westerners from Europe, but also the Gulf Cooperation Conferences, and as I've said before, you need some moderate Islamic imams to start coming into the picture on this and demanding that this organization stop bastardizing the Islamic religion.
Bob, you care to comment on Rand Paul's op-ed?
He's wrong. Look, our military wins wars. They're not peacekeepers. We can't go in and separate the Shia and the Sunni, and this is what it's really about, is sectarian war. And, you know, this president didn't create this mess. The previous administration did. And putting a lid back on this, I'm not sure how to do it. I spent my adult life in the Middle East, and I've never seen it a bigger mess. And I see no obvious solutions, and you have to play it day by day. And there is no strategy to be had, an easy one.
You know, James, I heard someone earlier say that ISIS is possibly the most successful terrorist organization in history. They've taken a lot of territory, they are growing, they have weaponry, and they also have a lot of money. Well, where does that money come from?
Well, the money comes from a variety of sources. Much of it is generated internally. I mean, the reason why they've taken the territory that they have is that it's sparsely populated on the one hand, but on the other hand, this is the oil territory of Syria. They get their money through hijackings. They get their money through so-called taxation, which is really a protection racket. They get their money through smuggling, and they get their money through private sources from the Gulf as well. So they're not lacking for funds.
Do you expect to see airstrikes in Syria? First, you, James.
That's a difficult question. I think that that probably will happen. But as Yogi Berra once said, predictions are difficult, particularly about the future.
Bob?
I think we're going to be forced to. I think that ISIS may have some staying power. There's so much money's coming in from the Gulf, and there's such a mess with this government in Baghdad, which the Sunnis have told me they will not accept it. It's the same as Maliki. Abadi's the same guy. They won't come back as is. Until this sorts out, you're going to see a lot of Sunni support for these guys. Yet they're going to be killing people, a lot of people, massacring people. And I don't see how we can just sit by the sidelines and watch it. We have to go over after the capital, Raqqa.
General?
Yeah, I disagree a little bit, because a lot of the Sunni friends that I have still in northern Iraq are telling me that there's already starting to be a movement against ISIS in that area. They are already starting to see a bigger resolve on the part of a government that's becoming less and less sectarian. And I think you're going to see the moderate Sunnis in that area start to come back to the government, because just like the Al-Qaeda operations there's going to be another awakening. They're going to say, we can't put up with this kind of religious extremism. So back to your original questions, will there be airstrikes? I think there's going to be a lot of aerial reconnaissance in the next few days and possibly weeks. There may be strikes in the area, but it's not going to be directly against forces in Syria that would support any kind of operations, at least in the short term. It may happen eventually, but not anytime soon.
Gentlemen, thank you. Texas Governor Rick Perry facing a felony indictment, which you think would worry him, but he's apparently so unworried that he is considering another